All right, this is lesson number 1 in Excel, how to make a table and graph. So if you know how to make a table and graph, don't watch this. Or you can watch it, but it would be strictly for entertainment value. So we're opening up Excel. Maybe. And you may not have Excel. You may have a different graph program, and that's fine. Or you may have a different version of Excel, and that's fine. You're honors students. You'll figure it out. I'm going to choose blank workbook. And this is what comes up. It's just this screen with a bunch of little boxes on it. These boxes are called cells, C-E-L-L-S, like where the nucleus is, or prisoners, depending on your point of view, I guess. And what we're going to do now is just enter data into these cells, and we're going to graph it. We're going to make a graph out of it. So you guys were asked to measure the diameter. Let me type that in here. Of some cylinders. So perhaps you're even measuring them in centimeters. So we're going to have a heading here, diameter, and you were also asked to measure the circumference of those cylinders. So I'll put that in as a heading too. And we can see right here that the word diameter with the units and circumference with the units goes into the next cell, or it seems to. So this word diameter doesn't fit all the way in this cell here, A1. You can see there's an A here and a 1 here, so it's kind of highlighted. This would be A5, and it highlights it for you, and it writes it up here also. This doesn't fit here. This doesn't matter that it doesn't fit here. The word circumference seems to bleed into this column C. It doesn't matter. But if it matters to you, and for some of you I'm sure it will, you can drag this and make it a little bigger if it makes you feel better. So I can put my cursor, I put it right here between the column A and column B till it turns into this two-headed arrow, and then I can drag it over and I can make these columns as wide or as narrow as I want. So that's an option. If I want to put this in bold, I can do that too. Just click on the cell and click bold, and I can have those in bold. I can put in grid marks. We'll see how to do all that stuff. So let's say that I take my 5 cylinders and I measure their diameters, and they happen to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 centimeters. And then, however, I'm going to measure their circumference. I measure their circumference, and I get 3, 7, 10, 13, and 17 centimeters. So these are the measurements I took. This would be, we could call it our experimental data. So I have the data in here, and I want to make a graph out of it. So what do I do if I want to make a graph? Well, somewhere you're going to find charts. So click on that, and you may have shown what's shown here, which is a bunch of options for different kinds of charts to make. We are almost always going to make a scatter plot. So if you don't see scatter plot, which is this right here, if you don't see it as one of your options, it's in there somewhere. So maybe you have to go into other, and maybe it'll be in there somewhere. God knows what half of these things are, but maybe it will be in there or somewhere else. But we want to make a scatter plot. So how do I make a scatter plot? I'm going to drag and highlight all of my data here, and I can even highlight the words if I want. I'm going to click scatter plot. I want a marked scatter, and there it is. This shows my graph. Now, this isn't done. If you just handed this in to me, I wouldn't be quite sure what it was, and it wouldn't get a very good grade. So for this title, circumference versus diameter. And I don't really need the units in the title, but I do need to label the axes. So this is a text box. I just clicked on it and I typed something else. But I want to label these axes. There's numbers here, but I don't know what is what these quantities are on the X and Y axis. So right here I click chart layout, and I see that one of the options is chart title, which already showed up there, and one is axis title. So I'm going to choose that. First, the horizontal axis. I know on this axis I plotted the diameter. So I'm going to put that. I'm going to include units also. Then I go back and pick the vertical axis. And I know on this axis it was circumference. And I put my unit. So I have that information there. I don't really need a any legend here or anything like that, so I can get rid of that. I can go in the corner here and I can stretch this out and make it bigger. You're going to end up importing this into a Microsoft Word document or some comparable word processing document, word processing program. So you don't really need to alter it too much when you're in Excel, but it could make it easier to see. Now, what I want to do when I make these graphs is choose the best fit line. So I'm going to right click on one of these dots. So I'm going to put my mouse right over any one of these points. I'm going to right click. And I'm going to choose from those options, Add Trend Line. And I think this is the same on Macs and PCs. So I get all of these options here. And I can click around and I can kind of get a sense. You can tell that some of these just aren't fitting and some fit better than others. I happen to know that this is a linear relationship. So I click linear. And it gives me this best fit line. It does it for me. So I don't have to worry about it. If I want to know, well, how well does that line fit those points, I can go into options. So I'm still in here. I still chose format trend line. I chose my type of graph. I want a line graph. It's linear. I can go in options and say, you know what, display an R-square value. And an R-square value we're not going to get into too much, except to note that the closer it is to 1, the better your points fit the line. So an R-square value equals 1 means every point is on the line. So I've displayed my R-square value. I'm also going to display an equation on here. And I'm going to click OK. So I have this information here. We are working with real equations and we're working with real quantities here. So this equation is going to actually have meaning for us. So we're going to look at it in the next video and we're going to see what this equation is telling us here, what we can discern from it. But I can see I have an R-square value that's very close to 1, so the points fit the line pretty well. And my equation, y equals 3.4x minus 0.2. The y-axis variable is circumference. The x-axis variable is diameter. So this is saying circumference, according to my data, equals 3.4 times the diameter. Minus 0.2 would be the intercept. So we've made a graph and we've made a table, and that is the end of this first lesson. So don't use these same numbers when you make your graph because I'll know you made them up. But you should be able, this is patterned exactly after what I expect you to do on yours. So this would be the first step, and that's the end of this lesson.